Pennsylvania, home to the former capital of the United States and over 27,000 square miles of forest. The state's population of 13 million consists of diverse ethnic groups hailing from all over the globe: Germany, Italy, Ireland. Why did all of these people end up here? The answer can be found just beneath the surface. As the coal industry flourished throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, Pennsylvania became a keystone of sorts, attracting thousands upon thousands of workers to fuel the ever-expanding mines, in turn fueling the United States. We decided to take a closer look at the history of coal mining in Pennsylvania, tracing it all the way back to its roots and discovering just how significant this black gold was in shaping the demographics and economics of the state. So join us and travel into the mine. What we know today as coal started its formation 300 million years ago, when eastern Pennsylvania was covered in swampland. In these marshes grew a variety of tropical plants, but after the trees fell and the dense undergrowth decayed, a thick layer of black humus was formed. Over millions of years, the Earth's oceans rose and covered the forests, silt and sand slowly settling on the humus below. The tremendous pressure created by the weight caused the humus to metamorphosize into coal. The coal created was soft, known as bituminous coal. As more time passed, the oceans receded and a new forest sprung up where the old one had once existed. This process repeated itself numerous times, creating many different layers of coal stacked on top of each other. As Earth's tectonic plates shifted and created the Appalachian mountain range, the bituminous coal at the deeper layers underwent another change and became harder and more compact, what we today call anthracite. More time passed and glaciers cut through the valleys, severing mountaintops and leaving the remaining coal deep underground. The first Pennsylvanian coal mine was established in 1761, a bituminous mine at Fort Pitt, modern-day Pittsburgh. Due to the high number of impurities found in bituminous coal, it was often processed and turned into coke after extraction. Large amounts were used for power generation and by steel forges in Pittsburgh, which, by 1830, was consuming more than 400 metric tons of coal per day. The demand for steel generated by the explosive growth of the railroad industry and shipbuilding began to further impact bituminous coal production in western Pennsylvania. In 1762, on the eastern side of the state, a bed of anthracite was discovered. Unlike bituminous coal, anthracite did not need to be processed and was ready for use as soon as it was mined. Anthracite was mainly used for heating homes and powering trains or steamships. Anthracite coal became more useful in 1792 when the Lehigh Coal Company first used it commercially. The Lehigh Coal Company would go on to be one of the major players in the coal mining industry in Pennsylvania for the next 2 centuries. As historian Edgar Hayne once stated, anthracite kept millions warm in growing cities, fired furnaces in the industrial Northeast, spawned extensive transportation networks, and provided jobs for immigrants seeking better lives. What initially appeared to be just black rocks became black diamonds, creating astounding wealth for some Pennsylvanians and holding so many more in poverty. By 1853, annual coal production had risen to 11 million tons, and 20 years later it had risen to 21 million tons. The Pennsylvania coal industry reached its heights in 1918 during the climax of World War I. American industrial business boomed and virtually everything ran on coal. Railroads, steamships, electrical generators, and most importantly, home and commercial heating. Nearly 330,000 miners produced about 277 million tons of coal, worth $11 billion by today's standards. The success of this booming industry came with a price, however. Although the mine owners became wealthy, the majority of the mine workers were not only impoverished, but their lives were also constantly at stake. Working conditions inside the mines were atrocious. In some Pennsylvania mines, it was reported that the mortality rate amongst miners was as high as 1 death per week. Even after miners stopped working, many developed coal workers' pneumoconiosis, or black lung. This disease has no known cure and causes massive drops in the quality of life due to shortness of breath and fibrosis. In order to learn more about the working conditions inside mines, we decided to take a trip up to Scranton, a former mining town, to take a tour of the Lackawanna County mine. Once we were 1,300 feet below the Earth's surface, we met Edmund Neidlinger, a former coal miner and current owner of the Little Buck Coal Company. He was gracious enough to show us his personal photo album and tell us about his time as a miner. He then gave us a tour of the mine and informed us about the conditions and work hazards coal miners had to face while on the job.
Most of them only made it to 50. And when a miner died, they'd take him in the hearse and put him in the front porch. The older colliery companies and that, they took the body to the person's house and they put him on the porch. That's where the family had to get him. And they held most of their wakes inside their own home. Sometimes there'd be 2 or 3 miners laid out in the same home if they had a large accident.
We learned that miners often lost their limbs and sometimes their lives to runaway mine carts, and that children were hired to stick short wooden rods called sprags into the cart's wheels to prevent them from going any further. As Ed told us,
There's lots of times they lost their hand or their arm when they missed the wheel. But he had to keep that mule from getting killed, because to the mine owners back then, that mule was more important than he was. If he was hurt or killed, they just hire another boy. But that mule they had to pay for. That was company equipment.
each mining town had a company store, a place where miners could buy all the supplies they needed. Although this seems like a good thing, the miners had to buy everything from food to dynamite at these stores. Since they were run by the mining companies, the miners would be paid for their work, then essentially have to give the money back in order to keep working. It was a vicious cycle. Miners sought to better the conditions of mining from the coal companies, but in turn were ignored. This ignited the creation of mine workers' unions like the Knights of Labor in 1870, or most notably, the United Mine Workers of America, or UMWA, in 1890. In 1899, the UMWA led a strike in Nanticoke, Pennsylvania, which showed that unions could beat a subsidiary of one of the larger railroads. In 1902, Pennsylvanian coal miners, led by the UMWA, went on strike, demanding recognition and partial administrative authority. The miners received a 10% increase in wages and got their 10-hour day down to a 9-hour day. The union also forced the companies to set up a 6-person arbitration board made up of a mix of miners and administrators. As the coal industry grew, the demand for cheap mining labor rose dramatically. Immigrants were drawn to the coal mines through a variety of methods. Some immigrants from the coal mining districts of Britain and Ireland were already accustomed to the miner's life and found themselves at home in the coal towns. Other unsuspecting immigrants were lured by labor agents sent by the coal industry. These agents would often make false claims about the living conditions and wages in the mines. As the 19th century came to a close, mines saw a large influx in Irish, German, and Italian immigrants. Due to increased activity by unions, coal mine operators would purposely hire immigrants in order to break strikes and create linguistic, religious, and cultural barriers to discourage unions. While some immigrants tried to assimilate and accept American culture, others adamantly stuck to their native languages and cultures. During the beginning of the 20th century, union membership rose as the cultural and linguistic barriers weakened. Immigrant migration to coal mines resulted in increased cultural, racial, and ethnic diversity in many communities which had formerly been homogeneous. Many of the cultural practices of immigrants began to gradually assimilate into American culture, which had a profound impact on Pennsylvania's demographics. By the second half of the 20th century, coal was no longer the leading source of energy in the United States due to new and cheaper alternatives. Where once more than 50% of Pennsylvania's population mined coal, today less than 1% are involved in the industry. With new forms of energy such as wind and solar gaining popularity and investment, the coal industry is a shadow of its former self.
What do you think chances are that it's coming back?
It's too far gone. Trump can say what he wants, but it's not coming back.
Although coal is no longer the driving engine of Pennsylvania's economy, it set the course for its progress. The lure of this black gold drew people to Pennsylvania from across the Atlantic, creating the vibrant multi-ethnic quilt that still covers the state today. It defined the landscape of our largest cities and our smallest towns, with patterns of success and decline that still characterize communities from east to west. For these reasons, it is worthwhile to understand the impact coal has had on Pennsylvania, even as we move forward into the light of a new era of energy.